Hello and welcome to the Happiness Is podcast with me, your host, Bruce Aitchison from Happiness Egg Shaped. And today it's an old friend of mine who was also a bit of a hero. One of those times where you pinch yourself a little bit at who you got to play alongside or who you got to spend some time with. He's gone on a journey that is unique to him, and as we do more and more of these pods, the more I realise that there's not just one pathway for people to follow. He's a man around town. He knows all the whispers and all the secrets. I'm not sure he's going to share any of them with us, but what a rugby player. Played for Scotland, kicked goals, and had to field some of my awful passes every now and then, but was very, very kind to me as a young up-and-coming player. So a mentor, an experienced campaigner, even though he looks younger than me and he's probably a fair bit my senior. Please welcome the one and the only Mr. Michael Dods. Hello, Michael.
How are you doing, matey? How are you doing? What an introduction. I can't beat that.
Well, do you know, one of the things that as a young player at Gala, it was a different time, and there was still guys like you there who had, you'd played international rugby, you'd been around very good players, you'd played in the era where there was no professional and all the best players were in club rugby, and you had an unbelievable amount of experience. When you were in that period, were you excited about becoming pro rugby?
I guess it's a strange one, Bruce. I think because I'd played most of my career in the amateur game, and I guess loved the environment. We trained Tuesday, Thursday, played on a Saturday, had a couple of beers, but there was two or three of us even before that. Probably myself, Mark Moncrief, a couple of other guys. We do training on a Monday ourselves. Or a Wednesday, and then we'd have Friday off, play Saturday. And again, a lot of that, as we tried to kind of grow in the game, we've done professional sprinting with Charlie Russell, and just to try and give ourselves a little bit of an edge. But look, and then the game went professional in 95, 96, and it changed. I guess I was at the stage I would probably be 27 at that stage, so I probably was at the tail end of my career, which I'm not sure if I could have done the day in, day out. You know what I mean? And I did it in Northampton, which was great. But I say I think I'd spent too much of my career in the early days.
And some of those guys that you played with and against, like the best players in the country, some of them the best in the British Isles, and two or three probably the best in their position on the planet at the time. Who did you love playing against? Who was the big rivalry?
I mean, obviously, when you like Gala, it was the Gala Hoik thing had always been the thing in the past where you had obviously brother had played and stuff like that, Arthur Brown and Colin Gass, David Bryson's, all these kind of guys who had came through when you were at the very start of your career in Gala. But I guess probably Gala Melrose became quite a big rivalry. Melrose are an amazing team at the time. We had a pretty decent team, and but you kind of grew up with these guys right through age group rugby, so it was always a kind of a tough rivalry in Melrose. We used to love the Boxing Day games. Where you get probably a decent crowd, to these sort of games back then, and it was always great to either play at the Greenyards or Netherdale and bash the hell out of each other for 80 minutes, but then have a couple of beers, So,
and the bit that we all look back with romance is you played club rugby. You, as you say, you knocked hell at each other. Then you had a couple of beers, but then you pulled on a South jersey, and I loved the South. I love the districts. Where
I thought it was an amazing. At the time that was a player's ambition. You played for your hometown. You tried to get in the district. The district was a pathway then in international or age group. But for me, growing up, that red and white hoop jersey was always was amazing because probably like we went to games as kids, the All Blacks, Fiji, Australia, where you had the South team at the time probably had 13 internationals in it that were playing for Scotland, and you were running apart from New Zealand, you were probably running these teams pretty close, So I'm at the South for me was great. I loved that environment because again, you were playing with the best players in your district, and I think it was always great that the border people were brilliant. I thought because whether you're Gala, Melrose, Hoyt, Langham, Kelso, Selkirk, whatever, Jed, when they pulled on that red and white jersey, everybody came and supported you, and it didn't matter who you played for, which was a brilliant thing.
Who did you play with that you'd knocked lumps out on a Saturday for years, and you had an opinion of them, and then at the South you thought, actually,
I didn't knock lumps at anybody. I wasn't
no, I know.
Look, I guess you got a different perspective of players. When you played against them, you thought, God, I bet he's a real pain in the arse. You know what I mean? Excuse the language. But then when you got to know him, you thought, God, I'd rather have him on my side and that's what made him so good. I mean, I think the Melrose guys, I think, always set the standard. And I think probably going back to, I heard you on with Creamy the other week, and, he set Melrose on that kind of pathway. I think, when everybody else was kind of not training, they'd be training Christmas Day, you know what I mean, before the Boxing Day game. They were just, he was pushing them a little bit further. And I think he obviously had a core group of players there that gave them, and that's why they went on to have a successful time in that early 90s,
And you played club rugby for Gala. Sevens was also something you excelled at, and obviously the Borders, home of Sevens, really competitive at the time. Gala Sevens was massive, and then Melrose, and then every club had their Sevens tournament, and you guys took it really seriously. How did that help your progress as a player?
I think, again, you're going back to the way rugby's changed over the last 25 years. The size of players. I wasn't particularly big, but if I think of the Gala team, was myself, Chinky, Farkey, all pretty slim, really. Mouse Maitland, John Amos, even Burger. When he came in, he was probably coming a little bit later. He wasn't massively big, but it created a real good high skill level. I loved the Sevens because there was just that little bit more space. So if you did have a little bit of speed, I guess in guile and stuff, you could try and do stuff a little bit better. But we had an unbelievable team. Collectively, I think we couldn't get over the hump early. I think it was probably early 90s. We ended up beating a few finals, and it was actually. I used to love playing the Sevens, but it was a strange thing. I kind of wanted it over. As soon as we started playing, I was like, I just wanted to end because I didn't want to lose, and it was a horrible feeling. And being at a few finals, we got beaten, we just couldn't seem to get over the line. And then we played, I think it was we played the Gallus. It was at 92 at Selkirk when we ended up playing. England were there, Scotland were there as the guys. Johnny Brown and Pete were the coaches, and we went out that day and we ended up beating England, or an England Sevens team at the time, who 4 or 5 of them went on to play and win the World Cup later on. And then we beat Northampton in the final, as well. Guys like Harvey Thornycroft, who I played with, Nick Beale, really top players. And suddenly the belief, it's like just having that belief of getting something over the line. And then after that, everyone seemed to click. And, it was just a joke about some games saying, we turn up at a Sevens, we're like going, oh, this is, and it sounds a bit kind of arrogant and it's not meant to be, but it's like, oh, this is in the bag today. And like, we just laugh if somebody got the polish for the cup, and we used to take the mickey with each other, and we were just so relaxed when we went into it that we probably played the best rugby, but we also had very, very good players that could, back in the day. And I know that Sevens games change. You were in Hong Kong when I played at international level. Suddenly it was like, wow, you're playing against New Zealand's and Fiji's, where he thought he was actually quite a good player until he started chasing them, and it was just unbelievable. I remember going out to Fiji. We went to Fiji with the Scotland team, and we looked at the draw and we were like going, oh God, we've got like 3 Fijian village teams in our group. We've got to walk this, boys.
You thought you were playing against Stow?
Lost by 30 points every tie. And and then we ended up playing New Zealand in the plate. And it was like 8 Fijian teams in the main competition, and New Zealand, Australia, Scotland, Canada, all the kind of international teams were all knocked out. It was unreal.
But the Sevens circuit gave you that platform to play for Scotland, because it wasn't an organised thing. The Sevens was played in the Borders, and then it became an international thing. Going away, playing with guys who weren't in border teams,
Yeah.
Was it a different feel when you pulled on a Scotland 7 shirt?
I guess so. I think, we were lucky, I guess. We had guys like Roxy and stuff. It was myself. Trying to think the team who went out there now. Gregor played when we went on tour. So, you knew a few people. And there was a couple of London Scottish guys. Ian Morrison, who played, was a very good sevens player. Mark Appleson, Dave Millard, who were all quite specialist seven players. But it was just a great environment for us we kind of knew that was a potential shop window for the 15s. So if you played well in that, although the 15s is a different game, you could show that you've got a bit of pace or you've got a bit of skill or whatever, then that was definitely an opportunity to show the coaches what you could do and hopefully push you into that 15s game, which primarily everybody wanted to go into because there wasn't a seven circuit then. It was Hong Kong as and the one time we went Fiji, Australia, Hong Kong was a bit of a tour before the World Cup sevens. And then I got dropped.
It happens to the best. It happens to them all. And when you got into international rugby, was that an ambition? Because growing up in Gala, you had your brother. Never mind any of the other role models. Your brother was somebody you obviously looked up to and had experienced it. Was that an ambition as a kid in Gala? I want to play for Scotland, or did you just want to play for Gala and see what happens?
I think never thought about it when I was younger because you just think, well, I'm never going to get there in terms of you just don't know if you're going to be good enough. And I'll be honest, I was bang average player when I was younger. Went to mini rugby and stuff. And then you got to school, started playing a bit more. But obviously, Moff and Jim Shearer, Don Lednam were really proactive at the academy, which I think helped a lot of boys, develop. But then, obviously, Pete was obviously playing international rugby at the time, which, there was always a kind of, oh, well, and there was a comparison made saying, well, you're never going to be as good as your brother. And I totally take that on board. He was, you look back now and the career he had was amazing. And, played Grand Slam, whatever, played Gala Championship winning side. So it was always that fear, but it was also a motivation for me. When I got to maybe 15, 16, I thought, right, everybody's kind of knocking you down a little bit. So I'm thinking, right, I'm going to really push hard to get it. So probably about that age group when I played Scottish under 15s, and that was the kind of, I thought, right, am I good enough to do this? But I need to push on. And that's when I really looked at kind of myself and like, right, I need to get faster. You know what I mean? It was a real thing, and that's where, guys like Charlie Russell helped me massively,
Yeah, legend. As a kid watching Gala, John Amos, yourself, Ian Corcoran, Gregor, kinda, because everything happened quite young for him. Yeah. There was a conveyor belt, and you had looked up to all those guys you already mentioned who went before you. It was a thing that just happened at Gala. I remember coming in as a young player, and Stevie Scott was going to take my head off for throwing an inside pass without looking. I can remember you being quite focused, you didn't say a lot, but when you spoke, there tended to be a real point to what was coming. Amos kind of growled at folk and, made sure that you were on it. The Bally kind of, Tam Weir sort of swanned around, and when they needed to, they flicked the switch and went on. That was an amazing, I'm not sure I appreciated it at the time, but that was an amazing thing to learn. When you came into it, who were you looking at and thinking, I'll take a bit of that, and I need to be more like that, and I need to listen to him?
I mean, I think I played, sorry, phone. When I came in, 17, I played guys like David Leslie was coming to the end of his career, Bobby Cunningham, Derek White, and I guess, again, that's when rugby's changed. It was all kind of, a lot of time was blood and guts in the changing room, let's get fired up and go out, whereas now it's a bit more calm. It's like, know your situation, know your processes, there's, not a lot of words spoken, whereas, and I was captain, for some reason I got captained in the sevens quite a bit. So I think that helped me kind of just generate. And I think you kind of want to try and lead kind of by example, by, just doing the right things. obviously sometimes you do make mistakes, and I think you learn from them. I think, and as you grow through that experience, I'm probably about yourself. You didn't appreciate being in that changing room. And I look around at the players that played with, it was just unbelievable. You know what I mean? And I think you can step up and you think you're playing with international players here at a club side, and also the club side you're playing against. You know, you might be going out to play Edinburgh Accies and you're playing against like David Stoll, John Allen, Richardson, McIver. You know what I mean? It's just like, holy crap, you know what I mean? And, you know, there was no cameras or anything. It was like full on kicking the 10 bells out each other, you know. But it was a great learning curve, I think, for everybody. And I think that kind of helped me as I kind of, you know, progressed.
Do you miss the changing room?
I did miss the training.
Yeah.
I trained hard. I trained really hard because I had to train really hard to get to speed and whatever I tried to do. I wouldn't say I massively enjoyed it. I really missed the banter of the changing room. You know, you miss the training crack and the bus trips and that. And again, I'm talking back to the kind of old days. I would say when I went to New Zealand, that they were before that. It was a kind of culture that, you know, he trained hard, he played hard, but, you know, off the field he went hard as well. You know, so it was a great balance. You know, but I do miss that camaraderie in the changing room and stuff. It's something that you can. I don't think any player when they finish, you kind of go, God, that was just like a little bit of that back. You know what I mean?
You can't put a price on it either, can you? It's not something you can put a value on. It's just really special.
It's memories, I think. You know what I mean? You try and think back some of the time you end up. I'm probably quite a selfish person. You look at the things you've done, you think, God, and you'd start to really look back at them as every player, whatever level you've played at, and you'll remember the victories or the bus trips or, you know, lifting the cup or, you know, and, you know, we were very lucky at Gala. You know, in the 15-year-old, we probably let ourselves down a little bit with the group who could have probably done a bit better, I think. We obviously done well in the sevens, up middle block of the early 90s to 95, 96. I mean, we went, you know, we just felt we had a chance in every tournament. And there were some good sevens out there as well at the time. And then latterly at the end there, you know, I was lucky enough to come back to Gala and, you know, play in a team of youngsters, I guess, like say were at the time Heinze, you know, Mossy, Davy Gray, you know, and suddenly, you know, go on and won the cup and we won second division and stuff like that. So it was a really fun time.
That was a brilliant thing, and I've spoken to people about this before. The club Gala means a lot to you. Obviously, it was where you started, so it gave you roots, but it then gave you wings to go. You did the international scene, you played overseas, you played down south, but you still came back. And of all the things you've done, you've mentioned winning the cup and winning the second division because it meant something to you. You did it for your home club, and that, you know, I was at that cup final. I was in the clubhouse after. It meant a huge amount to quite a small number of folk.
Yeah,
but it's still a massive memory.
I think it's you know, I always remember. For me, my real kind of big mouse for Gala, like the Melrose Sevens '94, you know, was, you know, we played there, we weren't giving up. We were in the preliminary round again. But we went through that and we ended up beating like Manly, Cambridge, and we beat Wasps in the final, in a mud bath. But that was just because there's a group of Gala boys that you played with that just went out and done that. And then again, I think the cup thing was, but you realise what it meant to, you know, the players. It's great because you live in that moment, but, you know, you look at the committee guys and the volunteers and, you know,
Happy loved it.
Happy, these boys, but, you know, the clubs are built on that, and you need these people to help out and do it. But it meant everything to them, you know. And again, probably at the time you didn't realise how much it does, but, you know, as you get older and you look back, it does.
And how did Northampton come about? Because that was an era that players were able to go and do that.
Yeah.
And am I right in saying you came up and played at PL10s?
I did, yeah.
And you beat, because we played in the final. It was Northampton against Gala in the final.
Yeah.
And that team was absolutely stacked with players.
Yeah,
You mentioned Nick Beale. I think
yeah.
Rodber was there, yourself. That was a pretty impressive group of boys. It's unreal to think they came up to PL10s.
I know. I don't know how that came about. You know, when I first thought about, I think I was getting to a stage I kind of got a little bit itchy feet. You know, I've been in Gala, and I was like going. And to be fair, a lot of other guys around me had kind of done a season in Australia or New Zealand, and I'd never done it. I was working at BGH, and I was like, you know, I was kind of probably settled where I was, and I thought I wanted to always have that opportunity to play overseas. And randomly, I started talking to Pete Walton, who was at Northampton at the time, through the Scottish setup. We were in Argentina in '94, and I was like, da da da. He said, look, put in touch. Geach is there, blah blah blah. Should come down. So I ended up going down for a weekend. Met Geach, said that walking at Franklin's Gardens, you know, and you've got at the time it was 10,000 people, and I'm like going, wow, is this what happens every week? And he's like, yeah. And I guess I says, look, well, I'm going away to play a season in New Zealand. He says, look, right, you sign when you come back. And I was like, great. So I made the decision to leave, went and played for Otago for a season. Then got the literally, I think Ian Hunter got injured. And he said, look, we need to come back a little bit earlier. So I came back, went straight in the team. Things went well. We were in the second division because I'd got relegated in the last game of the season. But then Gregor had decided to come. Johnny Bell, Alan Clark, the Irish hooker, you know, had Nick Beale, Ian Hunter, Tim Rodber, Dawson, Grayson, Matt Allen, and you're like going, holy crap, you know, I mean, this is, you know, and I was actually pleased to be in the squad because when you looked at it, I thought, why have I decided to come here? I'll never get a bloody game, but we went right through and, you know, we won the league that year playing unbelievable rugby, and I think they said, all right, tours, there's a tournament on Preston Lodge. Where's that, Dodgy? I was like, just outside Edinburgh. He says, oh, we've got to go for a pre-season up there. So we went.
On the Scottish Riviera.
The Scottish Riviera, that's it, exactly.
So let's rewind the tape a wee bit. How did Otago come about? Because I remember you have pictures of you in that really famous kit, the beautiful kind of royal blue with the yellow hoops and the big yellow O in the chest. I mean, those are ambitions a wee boy for Gala can't really hold.
Bit of a funny one, this, but Pete got a phone call. By the way, Pete had been retired for about 3 years. and this guy had phoned and said, oh, looking for a goal kicker to come over to New Zealand. Would you be interested? And Pete said, he said, look, I think you've got the wrong person. I think it might be my brother you're asking for. He says, I've been retired for 3 years or whatever. He says, I'm not going to New Zealand. So this guy phoned me, you know, back in the day. He says, oh, look, can you fax us some facts and stuff on like some of your reports and stuff? So I did. They then said, listen, we'll pay for your flight, we'll get you accommodation, like it used to be in the day, and we'll get you a job. And I just said, you know, I'm going to jack my job, I'm going to go for it. And I went out there, just to get my shoulder, first game in the club game. But then I played again 3 weeks. I got in the Otago squad. And, you know, just being there was just after the 95 World Cup, which was unbelievable time to be there because obviously the All Blacks had just got beaten when everybody, like to a man in New Zealand, had thought they were going to win. But, you know, even from the first day I arrived in New Zealand, I went along to the pie shop and, you know, get a pie, and the lady goes, oh, that's, you know, accents, where are you from? So I'm over for Scotland. I'm going to play. Oh yeah, you're the guy that's coming over to play in the. I'm like, what? I've been there literally 5 hours, and suddenly people, and it was a small town, Dunedin, you know, very at the Edinburgh of the South, and big Scottish connection and stuff. But amazing people. Really taught me about professionalism before professionalism, because I remember going to my first session and we were 20 minutes into session. And bear in mind, Cronfeld, Penny, Joseph, Mike Meeker, Anton Oliver, Tane Randall, Ellis, Bishop, Jeff Wilson, Steve Foster. And you're like going, oh my God. But we're going through the first session and I'm 20 minutes in, I'm like going, no balls down. Holy shit. Oh, here we go. And then suddenly you're panicking because you don't want to be the one that's dropping the ball, you know. And then Gordon Hunter's your coach, amazing. And then started doing these grids, and Mark Ellis, a bit of a joker, you know what I mean? Fun kind of guy on and off the field, but he started firing these passes at Alan Kenny, and they were bouncing off his chest. He was trying to grab them. This one, he threw it that hard, it bounced and it hit the ground. Well, you notice when you do the little grids, the cross grids. Next grid, he came running across, and Penny just went, boom. Leveled him, knocked him out. And I honestly, I was sitting, it was blood pouring out of his mouth. Bearing in mind, Mark Ellis had just scored 5 tries for the All Blacks about 3 weeks ago. And I'm like going, what the hell's going on here? But, someone went back to Cardiff. Mano said, went back to Carisbrook, showers. Ellis went up, apologised. That was the end of it. But it showed it's a real shock to me, because it was just like, wow, these guys are so... When you're on that field, it's concentration, it's doing everything right, don't mess around. And, I managed to get in the squad. I only played 3 games, but I was in an environment which was absolutely amazing. And I taken a lot from that when I came back, and then lucky enough got into Northampton, who had a great season. And, Gregor came down, and Geach was there playing a style of rugby that he, if you look back at the Lions in '97, a lot of the stuff that he took, Northampton were doing, wanted to play that open, fast game, the year before.
Right. Before we get on to Geach and Northampton, how do those names in Otago, which is an absolute hotbed of rugby, I mean, the names you've mentioned, just they're heroes to people way beyond the shores in New Zealand. How do they accept a Scotsman that they've probably never heard of?
I'll be honest with you, when I went to that first set, I felt, you could see them looking at you like going, who's this kid? You know what I mean? And I think you have to just get in, your work ethic there. And they used to always say, does anybody want to do extra? We had a day off and said, we've got to do extra. And I'd say, I'll go. And then there were 2 or 3 other guys and I think just by showing that you were like all in with them. And then as soon as, played the first game against Southland, we beat Southland, I think 21-19. I scored all the points, luckily, and it was just everything fell my way that day. But I think after that, suddenly they're like, "Oh, this guy's okay," you know what I mean? But there's a time it takes to get that and gain that respect. They're a tight knit community, but they'll let you in, but they want to make sure that you're all in with them as well.
Did you feel far from home when you produce a performance like that, and Heppy's not there to see you, and the Gala support are not there to cheer you on? Did you feel far away?
There was no social media or like any of that then, and you then had to phone home. You actually have to write letters back, and you just think, has anybody seen this back home? And I think maybe one of the Scottish reporters must have picked it up, saying that I was down there. Obviously, that first game had went well. So then there was a phone call saying, and so suddenly, there's a guy down there trying to, but I guess for a lot of players back then, it was a way of sort of trying to lift themselves up to a different level. It wasn't going down there just to have a good time. Although there was a lot of boys that did that, I definitely went down there to say, right, I want this to be a learning experience and try, and it helped me massively when I came back. Everything that I'd learned down there just from the players. You're training and living around All Blacks, and just what it meant to them to play. And we ended up going right through that year and got beaten NPC final by Auckland, and it was the first time. Yeah, I know, and it was one of them. I think Otago hadn't done that for a few years, so but when you look at the players there, it was frightening. You know what I mean? How good they were.
I love that level of rugby in New Zealand. I love the NPC level. It's a bit like a districts, I suppose. It's not quite there at Super Rugby. There's guys who are still working, but there's then these kind of rock stars that come back. I love that NPC level of rugby.
Well, I ended up working at Speight's Brewery, and Jamie Joseph worked there. Greg Cooper, former All Black there, and Jamie's like, yeah, let's go. I was like, it was middle of work day, and he's like, come on, let's go to the gym. I'm like, well, what do you mean? I said, but we're working. And he says, let's go. but they were given that openness,
that license.
just being in that environment opened doors for the company, so it was a pretty special time.
Spates, follow the stars.
Exactly. Proud of the
South. Proud of the South. And then you go with Geach. Now, lots of people are able to talk about Geach, but not all of them have been able to work under him or work with him. How special? How much did he shape? You've already mentioned what he did with Northampton, and then obviously the Lions. But what did he do for you?
Like he's obviously phenomenal coach. I think probably you look back then and he was ahead of his. People say that people are ahead of their time. I think he was. He was a great thinker about the game. But I think the big thing for me is when I came, it was like I'd come to Northampton. I'd Ian Hunter there, Nick Beale, all these great players. But he gave you the belief and he gave you confidence that he believed in you, and that was a big thing. The coach is like going, you've got this, and you can play at this level, and you can cause problems. And he would sit and just Gates wasn't a shouter. He was very methodical. Even the speeches when you hear the Living with the Lions, which I heard your one with Tom and Creamy the other day. I think back, you're saying the hairs in the back of your neck are going up listening to them. And back in Northampton days, very similar. You would sit and, about all the values and the family and people that put you there. And, you suddenly you're like going, oh, like you hot coals, I'll run over them for you, And he was that type of coach. But I think he gave a lot of confidence to you, a lot of belief in your ability. And again, I was lucky. I got a decent start down there. And suddenly we've got a run, and I think they gave the belief to the rest of the team, And obviously, I think Gregor being there just as a kind of, not just an ex-Gala player, but a Scottish guy that you felt like you weren't there kind of miles away from home as well. So because that was the first real time I'd moved away,
and it was massive. And I think lots of folk in Gala and the Borders took note in Northampton because you guys were there.
Yeah,
I think it was became their English team.
Yeah, and I mean they looked after really well, and the game was just going professional at the time. So it was we signed professional, but if you look back now, probably kind of wasn't a professional. It was a kind of hybrid, I guess, that you were looking at. So, but yeah, fun times with an amazing group of players.
Dodgy, I could talk to you all day, but what's the day job now?
So obviously, I'd worked with Under Armour for 17 years. Finished last year. Had an amazing time with them. Again, I look back and I think, God, I've been pretty lucky. You know what I mean? I ended up working with the Welsh team for over 12 years with Gats and Howlers and Alan Phillips, and who had 3 Grand Slams championships. So I was involved in the team and the players. Looked after Jamie Roberts, Lee Halfpenny, Haskell. On the English side, Mike Tyndall, and then signed Anthony Joshua 2013. And the brand, kind of when I started with it, was very small, and we had a meteoric rise and phenomenal people in the brand, and I had a great time. A bit of change last year. I got the opportunity to work for a small agency that said, "Look, would you come and help us build the rugby portfolio?" So I'm kind of doing that. I've went to the dark side of agency. And but yeah, just trying to handpick some really good players, look after them properly, try and impart some of my knowledge and experience on what happened in my career. Although the game's different now, I think some of the principles are still the same, and just trying to give these guys good advice. So if they as they hopefully go on and become professional rugby players, and also maybe thinking about what they're going to do after rugby as well, because it's a pretty attritional sport now, and you can be rewarded really highly for it, but it's you see the injuries that happen. So it's just making sure that people are realistic, and hopefully we can start building that. It's going really, really well. I'm enjoying it. A few Scottish boys on board now, and I've got a good collection of some English and Welsh players now. So yeah, hopefully you'll see these names coming through in the next few years, and let's hope they can go on and have a good club and international career.
I love it, and I know how much work you put into it, and I know the background you do, Dodsy, and I think with the life you've led, that experience. I hope they're listening, because I know you've got a lot to say. Dodgy, we're going to have to wrap up, but this is the only bit I primed you with. So for you, happiness is?
Has to only be one thing, Bruce, and it's good old Gala.
Give that man the freedom of the tune. Dodsy, I love it. I look forward to seeing you soon. It's been great to catch up with you more recently in life after a long time away, but I've absolutely loved having you on. Thank you so much.
Pleasure, Bruce. Thank you.
Cheers, mate.
Cheers, mate. Bye-bye.
Love it. What a boy. Happy to say I shared the field with him, although I don't think I helped his development with some of the things I probably did inside him. But a great guy, and I know he's doing a really good job looking after what I hope are some future stars and guys who are going to get a lot out of the game. If you've enjoyed it, you can catch us on Apple, Acast and Spotify. You can also watch the video on Facebook and YouTube. Go back and have a look at the back catalogue for some of the episodes that even Dodsy's listened to. There's a man who does his research. Lots of exciting things coming in the future. But in the meantime, please stay safe. My name is Bruce Aitchison and my happiness is egg-shaped. Speak to you soon.